Well, you're great. Well, you had a big fanfare when we promoted this, and everybody was, thumbs up and good comments in the LinkedIn channel. So really appreciate that. And yeah, you've got a great following. So, so a quick introduction. So we run a sort of a podcast, live webinar, content creation. We do optimizing the hiring process by the hire talents for CEOs, by CEOs. And we're running a kind of a special series here over the next few months. We're really hyper focused on construction and the trades, service-based companies. So we're really happy when Rocio popped up in my LinkedIn feed, and like, she wouldn't go away. She just like all her posts like every day, kept coming up, and she was talking about work comp and really talking to this exact audience, as well as others I know you guys work with, and you'll do a quick intro here in a sec, but that, caught my attention because I'm kind of a newbie to the work comp world. I acquired a company called Integrity First about 2 years ago, which is a pre-hire assessment that's used to screen candidates in the hiring process for risky behaviors, and has this kind of crazy scientific journal article based on 1.5 million data points on how it reduces work comp claims. And I'm a hiring guy. It's always been about excellence and, hiring great people who are retainable and high performers. And I never made that leap until I came across this product that we ended up acquiring. But so I'm always fascinated to meet people like Rocio, and I can't wait to hear what she has to say. So Rocio, tell us, my first question is, how do you become like a work comp expert? Like, how did you choose this path, or, what happened?
Yeah, so to give you a little bit of background of who I am, what I do. So my name is Rocio Luna. For those that don't know, I am a workers' compensation claims specialist, and I specialize in lowering down EMRs to rock bottom. And I, came up with that slogan earlier this year, to just basically hit the point on what is it that I do. And workers' comp, as if you don't know, workers' comp claims affect the experience modification rating, which is known as the EMR. So pretty much that workers' comp claims affect that rate, and that rate is your premium. So to go on your question is, how did I get into this space? Well, I fell into this space right after college. I graduated Cal State Fullerton back in 2017. I was 22 years old, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do. So I applied at all entry-level workplaces, and that included, claims assistant, sales administrative, and sales entry level. And I had my first interview was with an insurance brokerage out in Orange County. And they really needed an assistant who was bilingual. And at that time, I really needed a job. So they told me, like, hey, if we could hire you right now, would you come on board? And I said, yes, absolutely. Like, I'm looking for a job. And that was literally my straight answer. And they said, oh, you're hired.
This is how all great careers begin too, right? But that's like 7 years. Okay. So
yeah, no, 2017. So it's almost 2016. Sorry. I might be doing my calculations wrong.
Well, 7, 8 years, 6 years, it's a long time. Like, you stuck with it.
Yeah, it's 8 going to 9 because I'm going to be 31 this year.
Okay.
And I started back when I was 22. But yeah, so I had no idea what it meant to be a workers' comp claims assistant. I just thought, insurance, I connected insurance with, with your personal insurance. So I was like, maybe I'm going to manage car accidents, but in the workers' comp space. I know it deals with someone, someone gets hurt. And little did I know, when I sat at my desk, I see all these attorney letters and all these attorney, words that I had no idea what I was looking at. I was terrified. I felt like, am I even like certified? Is this legal for me to see these type of like documents? Like, I was scared.
Yeah. Those are some threatening letters, I'm sure.
Yes,
right?
yes, absolutely. They're 20 pages long, saying that, he or she hurt himself from head to toe, stress, sex dysfunction, can't sleep, diarrhea, and on top of that, they want $100,000.
Yeah.
And, it was very intimidating. I will
Yeah.
tell you that. And then trying to speak that lingo with the insurance carriers and the
Yeah.
investors. So
So you were thrown into the fire, basically.
yes.
So how did you get to now being really what I consider a thought leader in this work comp space? I mean, the content you share is like deep and detailed and really thoughtful. You have obviously spent enough time in this business to sort of understand the problem at hand in a multifaceted manner, right? What uh, aside from the need of graduating from college and needing a job, I think many of us can relate to that. My first job was like selling hot dogs. So, I was desperate for a job too. But no, you've leaned into it. What got you to lean in?
Yeah. So what got me to lean in was that, I was very passionate, from an early stages. So anything that I would do, I really want to go fully in.
Yeah.
And I wanted to understand workers' comp claims. And then once I understood, I think the level of frustration that employers feel,
Mhm.
because, I was putting the pieces together and then I would be like, oh my God, you're telling me that this person only worked for you for 1 month and
Yeah.
they want to claim all of this and they're working somewhere else. So I think I got that frustration. I was like, oh no, I have to do something. Or like, how do I,
Yeah.
how do I piece this together? How do I manage this? And then little by little, I started to gain a passion for it because I really saw the amount. I mean, if you live in California, the workers' comp claim system it's broken.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the ones that get help are the ones that, you know, falsely file these claims. And then you have those actual severe cases where
Yeah.
someone is legitimately hurt and that poor person can't get their treatment approved
Yeah.
because there's
Yeah.
some type of hold. And, I worked my way through all of that. And I really saw, I was able to connect the pieces. Okay, this is what, companies need. These are the processes on how to properly handle these type of claims. And there's really a gap in between that. A lot of
Yeah.
employers don't know that you could do a lot in between.
Yeah.
So employers just think, okay, I, filed the claim with the insurance carrier. They
Let
will
them
take
handle
care of
it kind of
it. Mhm.
thing. Wash my hands of it, but it's not that simple, right?
Nope, nope, nope.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is great. So I hear that you have a deep empathy for both sides of this equation, right? Your employer, your customer, the person, the organization that you're supporting by insuring them and providing them great, service and value and advice. But, there is two sides of work comp, right? There are people who are legitimately hurt and they're also being hurt by this problem as well, right? Because as you mentioned, it's difficult for them to get the care that they need with the right level of empathy and expediency. I mean, if you're severely hurt, like there's no time to waste. Like you might need surgery, you might need physical therapy, whatever it is that you need. So, everybody's being hurt by this kind of the problematic claims. I want to, I always want to be careful to take this to another level, but some others would probably just call it outright fraud, right? Uh, so I think there's a couple of premises why I think this, and you tell me, Rocio, if I'm on track or off track, or if there's something we can add here. But so one, last year, Travelers came out with a study, and they're like the largest work comp carrier in the world or something, right? Or at least in the US, right?
Mhm.
And they identified that 34% of work comp claims come from people who have been on the job for less than 12 months, irregardless of their previous experience. So hire a plumber, been doing a plumber for 10 years, they become a plumber from your company, then of the claims are going to happen in your organization, they're going to make up in a third to half. So there are certain sectors like hospitality and logistics and some others where they're almost 50% of those new claims, right? So it's a big problem with particularly new hires, right? And then the ultimate pain point or problem for the employers is, And I don't think that, especially some of the smaller companies that are growing, they're, 20, 30, 50, 100 employees, and they're seeing great success with their organizations. What they might be missing here is once these claims start to add up and your EMR goes up or your OSHA rate goes up, this can create a kind of a brick wall effect for your business, right? Your ability to win bids, either because contractually you're not meeting their requirements for safety standards, or your cost of employment skyrockets to the point where you can no longer be competitive in doing a project. And so therefore you're losing out on contracts. To me, that's like the ultimate reason why we should be paying attention to this. In addition to, taking care of people, but from a business perspective, that's the nail in the coffin, right?
Yeah, you're 100% right on that point. Bottom line, it hurts your bottom line.
Yeah.
If you have a high EMR, you are paying. So let's say the average EMR is 100.
Yeah.
So the way carriers calculate your premium is that anything above that 100, you're going to get a surcharge. So if you're at 108, you're going to get 0.08 surcharge. Now, keep in mind, yes, they do apply credits and so forth, but you are paying that certain percentage more. So if your EMR is below 100, then you get an additional discount.
Yeah.
So whatever percentage you are below, then you are gonna you will get that credit applied.
Yeah.
However, if you are now that 110 and above, you are definitely paying thousands of dollars more than the average person in your industry.
And if you're in construction, logistics, manufacturing, senior care, which is a big sector for us here, you might be paying 50 cents, 75 cents on the dollar if that starts to creep up, right?
Yes.
What are the numbers? I'm always curious. I don't know the real numbers, but I've talked to some roofers and they've given me some crazy numbers, like 75 cents on the dollar or something.
Yeah. That's actually a really good rate outside of California. If you're dealing with roofers in California, the average with zero claims, you're paying about a $37 to $42 a rate for every 100.
Yeah. So 35 to 40 cents on the dollar, basically, right? That's if you're good.
Yeah, that's if you're good.
I think of like our own company, we're just a bunch of people who work from our home and, we don't like drive anywhere. I think we pay like, I don't know, I think we still pay like 12 cents on the dollar or something like that, right? It's probably not, it's probably maybe like 3 cents or 2 cents or something like that. But that makes it pretty competitive, right? You got a $50,000 a year person, you just for work comp and the cost that you're paying the employee, you're already at $75,000 a year or something like that, right? So that makes it pretty difficult to deliver your product and service at a competitive rate, right?
Yep.
You brought up the 100 or 1, as your EMR, and somebody said this to me before in the work comp space, but 1 is like getting a C or a C- on your work comp grade. Does that make sense to you?
You could leave it at C, okay. With 100. C is like, all right, that's their average. We'll cut it off. They want to see basically anything below 90. 90, you're like, okay, you're good. 90 is like, okay, you're having some issues.
You're like a B player now.
Yeah, you're a B player. But honestly, especially when it comes to these, construction, manufacture, logistics, you're bound to get hurt just because of the nature of the business.
Yeah.
So is it possible for a contractor with 1,000 employees to have an EMR of 72? Probably the answer, I would say no, because out of 1,000 employees, someone, it's just chances. Yeah. It's just the law of numbers. Now you could probably have a less of a, drastic claim in the sense that maybe someone didn't fall. Yeah. And we just keep it very minimal.
Sprained ankle or something.
Yes.
Yeah. Like I'm back in 2 weeks, skateboarding again. Yeah. Well, I think that's interesting. I have met some construction companies that are in the sub 0.8 range. And, I think that in its experience, right? So I think it's difficult for the smaller contractors, right? Because it has to do with the number of sort of man hours worked essentially, right? Uh, over number of claims or the cost of the claims. How does that work?
Yeah, so it's based on the cost of the claim.
Okay. So your EMR is based on the cost of the claim. So you could afford some minor claims if you have a lot of man hours worked, essentially, right? And you could still be getting below that one level if you have a lot of payroll, right?
Essentially, yes, but frequency does hurt you too.
Okay.
So because the EMR is a record of the last 3 policy years. So
Hmm.
let's say throughout those 3 policy years, every term you had 5 claims.
Yeah.
So that would be a total of 15 claims.
Yeah.
You don't want to have a total of 15 claims that equal $1,000. That's already $15,000 in cost.
Hmm.
So you don't want to have frequency neither,
Yeah.
because you will get penalized for every claim. So any claim that's on the EMR, it
Yeah.
will be reflected onto your premium.
Yeah. And you made an interesting point. It's a 3-year history, right? So once the hole is dug, it's 3 years to get yourself out of this.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So you brought up an interesting point earlier. One of the things that you resonated with was like, we hired this person for a month, they became a claim, and now they're working for somebody else, right? And I think this is sort of where, your world and my world come together. And I've been a talent assessment guy for 25 years, right? And my why is if you can put great people on the team, the organization is going to thrive and everybody's going to be happier because everybody likes to be part of a winning team, I think. Right? Like nobody wants to be part of a bad news bears, I don't think, right? So that's always been my kind of driving my North Star as a leader. And then the last 11 years, helping people evaluate candidates and talent in the hiring process to make sure that they're hiring great folks. And what led me to this integrity first thing. But who you put into your organization, and somebody put this to me in this way, don't hire your next claim, right? So your client who had the employee for a month, who got hurt, who filed a $100,000 claim and is now working for somebody else, might do it to that person too, right?
Yeah, 100% of the time they do it to that person. And it is like
It's
I've had
100%.
yes.
That's a
Yeah.
bold claim.
Because when I look up, claimants that have filed a claim and they were less than 1 year, and then the workers' comp adjuster goes in the background and it's called EAMS, and you could see if they have filed a workers' comp claim, but only carriers are allowed to do that
Yeah.
on their side.
Yeah.
It will show up on the record stating that so-and-so did this for the last 5 companies they were with.
Yeah.
And they do it because they already know the system.
Yeah. So it becomes a habit. Like they're professional claimants essentially, right? So whatever you can do to prevent those folks, and so who you hire and making good decisions about who you hire can have a huge impact on whether or not you get tripped up with one of these claims, and whether you can, get the claim denied or not. Either way, it's still a big problem for you, I imagine, right?
Yeah. And that's exactly why you have to have like policies and procedures in place. Coming, starting from if there's real incidents that occur to record them. And then that also steps into having a physical examination. Now, I know some employers are pro and con on that just because of the cost.
Yeah.
But I could tell you that the employers that have implemented that, they have eliminated a great chunk of those people, because a lot of people, they get, thrown into, they have to, get a physical test, a drug test. Those bad apples are automatically going to say, yeah, this is too much work.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that aligns with what we've learned with, integrity first, right? Is, I don't know, 6% of people admit to using drugs. So this is usually near or at the point of application. And failed drug tests reduced from 4 or 5% down to 1% or below 1%. So it helps save some cost, but it's more about the headache, right? You know, I offer Rocio a job and I send you to the clinic and you pee in the cup and the clinic calls me and says she's, you know, not qualified to do the job. Like nothing's more frustrating than that situation, right? And then you've got folks that admit to stealing. There's like 7% of people who, you know, and work comp fraud is a form of stealing, right, from your employer. And then like 12% of people admit to being a liar. Like that's how they operate, is they believe that not telling the truth is the best way to operate in life. And that seems to have a high correlation with work comp claims. And it's not a direct one, but it does correlate scientifically. There's a big study on it that was published based on our research here. But what do you make of that?
I make of that there is a huge influence, at least here in California, through marketing from the applicant attorneys. So if you were to drive down to LA or any city here in California, you could go, there's probably like 10 billboards of attorneys asking, have you been injured?
Yeah.
And you go on the TV, you go on the radio,
Yeah.
you go on Instagram, you go anywhere,
Yeah.
to TikTok. They're getting really good on TikTok.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow.
And I think that also has surcharged this a lot because they've seen it. They're like, okay, well, I didn't know that, you know, California has a law that's saying that no matter if your claim is true or not true, you are deemed to $10,000 in medical. And that is true. That's actually
automatically, no matter what, period. Yeah. Yeah. And I've heard Southern California is the worst to top it off. Like specifically SoCal has got a culture of doing this. And there's a population of people who really have, you know, made a kind of a career out of doing this. Right. My father's a self-insured work comp, retired self-insured work comp guy. And he used to tell me this years ago before I got into this space a little bit. Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah. So you've got people who maybe are already on the fence and then they're just being encouraged to go to the next level, which is unfortunate. Okay. So part of successful hiring, you know, we talked about, so things you can do to prevent, to not hire your next claim, right? So, you know, you can do physicals, drug testing, integrity testing or other types of assessments, and get better at interview. What else can you do prior to hiring somebody to prevent hiring somebody who's got a higher probability of being a claim?
I would say, I mean, there's a lot of, with that being said, it's hard, right? Because sometimes, you know, on paper, this person looks, oh my God, so much experience. They worked at XYZ, they did this. And with the, you know, HR laws, you can't really call your employer and say, if there, you know, there exists an employer, what do you think about this person? And the most the other person would say is, I wish you the best. Or, you know, they can't. Some people are hesitant or reluctant to say things. You know, I've heard the opposite as well.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's one I have to fight you on. Like, as I hear that objection to doing references every day, all day, from everybody, from CEOs to HR people to people like you, to everybody I talk to. And I just call bullshit on that. I'm just going to say that, right? Think about it this way, right? Like you've been, we never got to introduce the company. Before we leave, you got to tell us about your company's New Rain, right? Insurance.
Yeah, Modern Rain.
Modern Rain, sorry. I knew I was going to mess that up. Have you been there the whole time?
No.
Okay. How long have you been with Modern Rain?
A year and 7 months.
Okay. I would imagine if I asked to speak to your previous supervisors, they would eagerly get on the phone and say nice things about you.
Yes.
Is that an accurate statement?
That's an accurate statement.
Yeah. Okay. And if I asked you to speak to your previous supervisors and they were not eager to hop on the phone and say nice things about you, right? What would I now begin to start to know about you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I I think that's like what you said, that's the pushback that people, which I encourage people to call, because you never know. There's people that have lie on their resumes.
Yeah.
You know, they got experience. You haven't. I had situations where employers have called their so-called resume, and this person never worked at that place.
Yeah. Yeah. 85% of resumes, by the way, include lies. Now, some of those are small lies and some of those are big lies, like never worked there before, right? But no, I highlight that point. But if you do that through 3 or 4 of the last previous direct supervisors, not HR. You never, ever, ever, ever call HR for reference, by the way, just so we're really clear about this, right? You identify who that person's supervisor was. And look, they may, again, I'm looking for emphatic people who are like, I would love to talk to you about Rocio and tell you how wonderful she was and all these great things she did. And we're so sad that she's gone and blah, 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 blah. Right. But it's the ones that won't say anything. They just refuse to talk to you because what did your mother teach you when you were little? If you have nothing nice to say,
Don't say it.
don't say anything at all. Right. So it tells you a lot about somebody who can't get nice things said about them. But the other one is, you can ask, is this person eligible for rehire? And even HR people are allowed to tell you yes or no to that question. And so that tells you a lot as well, right? So they may, if you are talking to HR people and they're unwilling to tell you anything about this person other than confirmed dates of employment and title, and then make sure you ask at least that, right? And again, the absence of references tells you everything. Okay. So once you hire them, this is really important. And, I think about Jack Welch and GE, like he had like a safety first kind of culture or mindset to the business. And they really like blew up during that time. So in my world, hiring, training, and onboarding. And I think that's big in your world, but what would be like one or two or three things that you talk about with your clients to help prevent, injuries or work comp claims with new hires?
So with new hires, it is very important to go over the employee handbook. Everybody has different policies and procedures within their handbook. And training, I always recommend doing 2 weeks. I know that might not be possible or not needed in certain jobs, but you definitely need to train them on the SOPs, what the process is within 2 weeks to a month, because everyone's different. But if you have a guy in the field, he definitely needs to be taught what the procedures are. And that's why people get hurt, because you might have, this guy who's been in the plumbing industry for 20 something years. And because there's a different procedure here on how things are handled, he might get hurt, or he might have, a situation where he gets into an accident just because the way he did it in this area is that completely different from what it is here. But I always say, train your employees and be very honest of what you expect from them. Because I think a lot of times employers are a little hesitant to say that because they're like, oh, well, I don't want to lose him or her because I really need this person. We're so backed up. We just need manpower. And I don't want to upset them, or I don't want them to think, I'm this control freak where I need, there's a difference between being a control freak and making sure that your people are meeting your requirements. Yeah. Because if you're not straight with them on what's required for them to be done on the job, or what you consider a complete task, they'll never know that. And that also creates tension with the whole team. And that's when you start having all these problems. Yeah. So you and I are speaking the same exact language. We're coming from two different worlds, right? Set clear expectations of what you expect from somebody, clear training and onboarding with like SOPs, best practices. You nailed something there though. You said, hey, the plumber who's been a plumber for 20 years and they come to your company, don't just because they've been a plumber for 20 years. This highlights, I think, the traveler study, right? Like 34-40% of construction workers, no matter what experience they have as a plumber or electrician or carpenter or concrete finisher, whatever, right? They're just as susceptible despite that experience. And it probably has to do with
that's not the way I used to do it at my old company, right? So yeah, I think that's a really, really important lesson and thing to think about. All right, so we're running out a little bit of time here. I see I have one question. Yes, two questions. Yes, that was Scrubs playing on your phone, and that was my fault. My favorite theme song for these webinars. What are the repercussions of a company hiding actual stats that affect their EMR when there's no real oversight in their safety program? That's a fantastic question, because I've heard this is kind of rampant in the construction space because they have so much pressure to not report these things, right?
Yeah, so the repercussions of that is hiding claims and then it comes out to be litigated, right? That's one. Second one is that are they hiding the claim or are they hiding payroll?
Yeah.
Because I think that's another one too. If someone, it happens a lot in PEO situations, and it's another common a common theme in the staffing world. So on the staffing side, there's definitely a lot of those situations
Like
where
misclassifying the worker and using a PEO to sort of like
yes,
to
they misclassified to 8018
yeah.
or they use another one, or they just simply don't report the payroll. That's another common thing that I've noticed, that because I worked on the workers' comp claim side.
Yeah.
So when I was, when I would be investigating these claims and collecting the payroll records, then, oh, well, yeah, this staffing agency, it turns out that they didn't have this person on payroll. So now we have to take over on our workers' comp because they don't have, the
on the employer now
yeah,
has to take on the liability completely.
Yes.
With it's always shared though, right? If you
Yes.
use a staffing agency and I'm the employer, I mean, if that person gets hurt, it's hitting both entities ultimately,
Yes,
right?
it hits both entities, but if the staffing agency doesn't have a valid certificate of insurance, or that person wasn't on the payroll because they're using the PEO, then the employer, the client, is the one who takes
owns all of the liability in that
Yes.
case, right? Yeah. So be careful what kind of staffing agency you do business with, right? Is the lesson to that then, yeah. And if, it's misclassified or it's something's done and then it does go to litigation, I mean, is your insurance company going to back you up, or now you on the hook on that all for yourself?
No, unless you're doing some extreme, like if you're an
Yeah.
8018 and they find out that you are cutting trees.
Yeah.
And I use that because that actually did happen.
Yeah, I bet.
Then they will deny the claim because that's like a completely different, out of the scope. It just depends. But if you're logistics and you're doing warehouse packaging and this person is just misclassified, they're covered.
Yeah.
But if it's something extreme, then yes, they will fight you on that.
Yeah. So they'll say, you employer, no, you're on your own on this one. And that could be quite costly.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So it doesn't really pay to try to bend the rules or, game the system or do anything like that. Now, there are legal ways and some really smart strategies. I know we're a little bit over time. I don't know how you're doing, but I want to hear, because you've got some claim management and some best practices that I think are really important. Because look, when it comes to hiring, when it comes to safety, there's not just a single silver bullet here. It's a, amalgamation of best practices here. If there is a claim, there are some really good best practices. Give me like 1, 2, or 3 of your favorite best practices to just do better here in this area, which will help you under your EMR, right?
Okay, so my best practice and my advice for everyone on here is mobile medical. So use a mobile medical first aid. It doesn't have to be mobile. It's just a first aid service that can help you cover up those small claims. So I always preach on it on my platforms, but there are several companies out there that do this. It's called on-site mobile medical. So they go out to your project, and if you have an employee that's hurt and is considered within the first aid situation, so that means cuts, lacerations, as long as you haven't fallen more than 4 feet, you're still considered under that threshold. And they will go out to your project and treat your employee on the spot, and you pay out of pocket. So you pay about $475 out of pocket. and it gets reported over to the carrier, but as a zero cost claim.
Yeah.
So because you pay out of pocket, it gets reported over to the carrier as a zero cost claim. You're able to minimize and avoid those type of claims.
Yeah.
So now you're not, you're not throwing anything under the rug. You're just using a service. And then of course, second one is if you form a relationship with a clinic. So having that clinic and client relationship is so important because clinics, if you give them a form and you build that relationship saying, hey, we have a return to work program. These are the other job duties that this person could do if they, can't lift 25 pounds. We have work for them. So automatically the clinic will not say, okay, well, we're not gonna, give you 2 weeks off, or you could go back to work in the office.
Yeah.
And you have to be seated and so forth. But
like a mild or moderate ankle sprain, like,
yes.
Here, help do some takeoffs or, answer some phones, or, I mean, really anything is better than, becoming a claim, or sitting you at home in front of Judge Judy where those attorneys commercials are popping up every, every 20 minutes. Right. Yeah. Awesome. All right. So tell us about your firm. How do we get in touch with you, your agency, and we'll drop everything in here in the chat as well, for everybody, but, and go ahead and do that if you can grab that. But
so the name of my agency is called Modern Rain Insurance Brokers, and they are out here in California in Orange County. And the way I could be reached out is via LinkedIn or Instagram. I will share my links in the chat. But easiest way to reach out to me is definitely through LinkedIn, which is Rocio Luna, or my Instagram, Rocio_INS_services. And just shoot me a message, and then I'm more than happy to connect with you.
Well, you're an easy person to remember. What a great name, Rocio Luna. If you get a chance, drop that in the chat there for anybody who wants to go to your website or your LinkedIn. I strongly recommend. I'm not an Instagram person. Maybe I'm old, but I strongly recommend following her on LinkedIn at minimum, and I'm sure she's just as great on Instagram. So do that, and if you are, if it's time for you to start taking, workplace safety, getting your EMR under control, if you're a fast growing company in the trades and construction, logistics, warehouse manufacturing, senior care, and you're maybe at 20, 30 employees and you're starting to see hyper growth, it's time to get out ahead of these things right now while you're, in that growth curve. Right. It's a lot harder to backtrack and fix all these things, once you've, hyper growth scaled. So, anyways, that's just my last recommendation. I look forward to sharing this content, with everybody who signed up for the webinar. We'll be sending this out here shortly once we get it all cleaned up. And then, Rocio and I will be sharing the best highlights from this, over the coming days and months and years, hopefully. And Rocio, it was a great pleasure chatting with you, and thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, the pleasure is mine. Thank you for having me on your platform, and hopefully we could do this again.
Awesome. See ya.
Bye.